At the very heart of how we understand the world is just one simple thing: the ability to think clearly. Sounds easy, right? But it's often so much easier said than done. So today, we're going to dive into the big ideas from D.Q. McInerny's classic guide, Being Logical, and see if we can find a clearer path through all the noise.
I mean, you've totally been there. You're talking with a friend, watching a debate, or just scrolling online, and you walk away with this feeling of, wait, what just happened? The points didn't connect. The conclusion came out of nowhere. It's just genuinely frustrating.
And hey, if we're being honest, it isn't just other people. Our own thoughts get tangled up all the time. We'll leap to some huge conclusion based on one bad experience, or we'll contradict something we believed yesterday without even realizing it. The thing is, this isn't a personal failure. It's just kind of how our minds work sometimes. The real question is, can we train them to work better? And that's exactly where this brilliant little book comes in. McInerny's whole point is that logic isn't some dusty academic subject that's just for philosophers. No way. It's a practical skill, an essential tool for navigating work, relationships, our own inner world. He wrote it for all of us. So what exactly is logic? Well, at its heart, it's about clear and effective thinking. And I love this phrasing. It's a science because it's built on firm principles and rules, but it's also an art because trying to apply those rules in a messy, real world, well, that takes practice, creativity, and skill. And the whole point of this art and science? It's really simple: to find the truth. Not my truth or your truth, but what is actually, factually real. Logic is the tool we use to make sure our ideas line up with reality, to connect what's in our head with what's actually out there. Okay, so before we can build sound arguments, we have to prepare the building site first, and that site is our own mind. This is so important that McInerny dedicates the entire first part of his book to this critical foundation. So where do we start? It all begins with just paying attention. So often we just skim the surface of things, especially stuff we see every day. But being logical requires you to actually engage with the world. It means truly seeing the details, because those details are the raw material for clear thought. And this lays out the first 3 steps perfectly. First, pay attention. Second, get your facts straight. And that means separating what's objective and proven from what you've just heard or assumed. And third, make sure your ideas accurately represent those facts. You get this foundation right, and everything else follows. So now that our minds are prepped, let's move on to part 2. This is where we explore the language of logic and see how those principles build into the primary way we express a clear thought, the argument. First things first, we have to redefine a word. In logic, an argument is not a fight. It's not about winning or losing or being the loudest person in the room. A logical argument is simply a claim that is justified with reasons and supported by evidence. It's a structured journey from point A to point B. Think of yourself as a detective building a case. You start with what you know for sure. Those are your premises. Then you gather solid, relevant evidence. From there, you build a sturdy bridge of reasoning that leads directly to a conclusion that has to be true if your starting points were solid. Now, once you understand what a good argument looks like, you start to develop a kind of superpower. You can spot the bad ones. McInerny calls these illogical traps fallacies. They're basically errors in reasoning that make a weak argument sound way more convincing than it is. As we look at a couple of the most common ones, ask yourself if you've ever heard them, or maybe more importantly, if you've ever found yourself using them.
So take a look at this one. See what's happening? The conversation is supposed to be about the economy, but suddenly it's not about the economy at all. It's about the person.
This is the classic ad hominem fallacy. That's Latin for to the person. Why is it so effective? Well, because it's a diversion. It completely hijacks the logical part of our brain and appeals to our emotions and biases. It's just easier to dismiss someone than to actually engage with their idea. The best way to counter it is to gently redirect. Okay, let's set his background aside for a minute. What do you think about the actual point he's making?
Or how about this one? We hear this kind of reasoning constantly. A single personal experience is used to make this giant sweeping judgment about something. This is the hasty generalization. It's so persuasive because we are just wired for stories. A vivid, personal story feels more real and compelling than a bunch of dry statistics. So the key is to always ask yourself, is this one story really enough evidence to support such a huge conclusion? You can counter it by acknowledging the story, but then questioning the scope. Wow, that's tough that it didn't work for them. I wonder if other people have had different results.
Learning to spot these traps, both in others and in ourselves, is so much more than just a mental exercise. It fundamentally changes how you interact with the world. And this is maybe the most powerful idea in the entire book. Being logical is not an innate talent, it is a skill. Just like learning an instrument or a sport, it's something that can be learned, practiced, and developed. No one is born a master logician, but anyone can become a clearer thinker.
And why should you put in the effort? Because logic is the foundation for almost all personal growth. Whether you're trying to learn a new coding language, trying to master a budget, or simply trying to communicate better with people in your life, the process is the same. Pay attention, get the facts, and draw sound conclusions from them.
This quote from the back of the book just puts it perfectly, and with a bit of humor. In a world that's overflowing with information, misinformation, and just flat-out confusion, the ability to think straight isn't just a nice-to-have. It's a survival skill.
So I'll leave you with that thought. In an age where it's so easy to get lost in messy arguments and tangled thinking, maybe the most empowering skill we can ever acquire is simply the art of making sense. Preparing our minds, building sound arguments, and spotting those illogical traps, it isn't just about being right, it's about finding clarity.